Welcome back to another episode of Grace and Grit. I am your host, Artrice LaNae. Thank you so much for joining me again. Today's episode is a little bit heavy. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little bit heavy. This is I guess a content warning, a trigger warning. We are going to be talking about grief and death. And I first want to extend my deepest heartfelt gratitude and my extend my sympathies and love to anybody currently in the valley of the shadow of death, anybody currently experiencing grief, and anybody that just may need an extra dose of love. But I feel like this topic is very important to talk about, especially as it pertains to our faith and what that means and what that looks like and all of those things. So I didn't want to shy away from it. I wanted to talk about it, especially because it's such a big part of even just my own faith journey that I wanted to be able to share with you all. So without further ado, let's hop into today's episode. So, grief, as we all know, as we've probably all been through at one time or another, whether that physically means grieving the death of someone or even the deaths of relationships, the deaths of ideas. Grief is a very, very hard thing to combat. It's a very hard thing to navigate and to honestly sometimes apply your faith. Specifically today, I'm going to be talking about grief as it pertains to those passing away. I'll sort of touch on some of the other things that I mentioned, but mainly focusing in on this piece. So, a little bit about me for those that don't know. I lost my grandmother, my mother's mother, when I was 8 years old. And she passed away suddenly. I can recall that entire day from beginning to end. And it was a very difficult thing to see my mother in that way lose her mother. And I can't even begin to imagine what that would feel like. Um, and then about 10 days later, or 12 days later, I believe, my great grandmother passed away. And we buried my grandmother March 7th, and we buried my great grandmother, I believe, March 21st. And so within 2 weeks, we had experienced two deaths, and those two deaths were kind of the beginning of the end, if you will, for me at that time, because both of my parents were grieving instrumental women in their lives. They were grieving the memories that they created with them. They were grieving the possibilities that had yet to be seen. And it was hard. It was hard for our family. In 2008, as a family in general, we had lost so many people that year that it's after a certain point, I'm going to be honest, it was hard to wrap my head around how many funerals we were going to. It was hard to wrap my head around even just the idea of crying any more than I already did. And of course, grief is no easy thing to kind of go through. Grief is not a one size fits all. There is no, you just do this thing and you're going to be okay and you're fixed. You really start grappling with your faith when it comes to grief. When people that you love have passed away, when you are praying over someone's sickbed and they still pass away, when you are praying for a different outcome and they still pass away, it can bring up anger, frustration, sadness, confusion. For me, death has always been very, very disorienting. And I said this in the last season, but it's very different when you have to experience death in this way. And then you're trying to apply your faith to this hard reality that you are now in. And for me specifically, I was I was hurt, but I think I was just more confused than anything. I was hurt because the reality hit me pretty quickly, even at a young age, that okay, I'm not going to see my grandmothers again. But then the reality sets in about, how do you move and operate in this life? How do you continue to go on? Um, I used to make the joke with my friends of like, I wish that there were some sort of sign we could wear, or a shirt or a wristband or a hat we could all wear that says I'm grieving, so people understand what we're going through. Because each day is different in grief. Each day is a different emotion. There are sometimes months where I go feeling just anger, and then there are other times where I go weeks feeling just the immense sadness that washes over you. And in 2023, in January, um, I lost my other grandmother. Um, and it was and still is a very difficult thing to endure and go through. Um, and so when you're now an adult and trying to make sense of this, um, it becomes very difficult. It I was here by myself at my home when I got the news, and a lot of my family lives down south. And so I wasn't immediately wrapped around the comfort of family and trying to process in your head what's going on. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And I think with grief, we don't always acknowledge the days after the funeral. You know, I always say, and you've heard many people talk about, the funeral is important. Please show up for the people at the funeral, show up for their family, show up for you know, their loved ones. But it's the days after the funeral when people stop calling, people stop stopping by, people stop checking in, and you're left by yourself in the sadness and the quiet of the reality of what's happened to you and to your family, and the reality that this person is no longer here. And for me, what always is a struggle is that grief is not one of those things that I can turn on and off. It comes at the most random times, the most inopportune times, might I add. I could be in the grocery store trying to just get cereal, and then I look at something and I'm reminded. Um, Lately, I've been seeing people that eerily resemble my grandmothers that have passed away. And so I am taken aback. It freaks me out a little bit. um, but then I'm reminded of their spirits, and I'm reminded of their love that they poured into me. I'm reminded of the overflow of love that they poured into me. And that goes for any of my family members that have passed away. It's never easy to see reminders of them, because now you're reminded that they're not here. And so while there's some comfort in understanding that their legacy lives on as long as I'm here, there's also the reality that, but they're not here. And so what becomes very difficult is trying to use your faith to help you get through those moments. And for everybody, it's different. So please, I've said this in multiple episodes, take what fits, leave what doesn't, right? But I can only tell you about my experience, and I can only tell you what has helped me on my journey, in hopes that it offers you some solace and some peace as you go through your own journey. But for me in grief, it wasn't until January 2023, when my other grandmother passed away, that I was actually able to apply my faith to my grief for the first time. When she passed away, I was in the middle of a 40-day fast. Like, I'm talking day 8 of a 40-day fast is when she passed away. And so I was completely undone. I was like, what do you mean? What does that actually look like? What do you mean I have to continue this fast, God? What do you mean you still want me to be obedient? Just again, disorienting. But what helped me was the fact that I was on the fast, that I had to be committed to the fast, because if I couldn't hold on to anything else, I needed to hold on to his word. that saying that goes around of, if you're only holding on by a thread, at least let it be attached to the hem of his garment, right? And so that's what it is. I was hanging on by a thread. I was hanging on by an idea, honestly, more than faith. And that's just real. And that's because at the time I didn't understand. I couldn't make sense of it. And while there was some peace in knowing that my grandmother was no longer suffering, there was still the reality of, but I don't get to make new memories with her. And so, God, I need you to help me figure this out. We talked about in the last season of Grace and Grit, when we talked about grief, my sister mentioned that, Artrice, when I called you when your grandmother passed, you were already playing worship music in the background. And I didn't know that I had done that. I to this day, I do not recall turning on music. I remember calling my aunt after my mom called me. And I called my aunt and I'm just crying through the tears. I tell her that my grandmother passed away. And she said, okay, I'm going to call you right back, because she had a meeting. And I guess between there and the 10 minutes that my sister called me, she said I was already playing worship music and she could hear it in the background. And I think there was probably, I can only imagine, because honestly, I'm telling you all, 2023, I can't remember fully what happened that day. And I just remember in that moment, I think there was a piece of me that just felt like I just need peace. I just need a sense of peace, because I'm not immediately around family. I'm here at my home by myself. It's literally the morning. It's like, it's that morning my mom gave me that call. It was like at 10 a.m. And so I'm just like, I have no sense of direction. I have no sense of comfort. Like, I'm in this house by myself, about to go crazy because I just got some of the worst news of my life. And I think in that moment, I probably just said I need peace, which probably prompted me to turn on the worship music. And what I will say is, throughout the day, I think music was just playing. Like, I don't think I ever turned it off, because people kept calling me to make sure I was okay and, checking in on me. And one of my friends called me. I vividly remember, like, crying because she FaceTimed me, just bawling my eyes out. And she's like, Artrice, I need you to breathe, just kind of breathe through it. And there was still music in the background, because she even said, she was like, you had worship music playing. And it wasn't so much asking God, like, why. I don't Personally, I don't ask God why when it comes to death. Even though it's very disorienting for me, I don't ask why. And so I I remember just feeling like, God, I need you to help me get through this. Keep in mind, I'm still on my fast. I'm still in this journey. I'm still going through the emotions of a fast. And this, at this time, was one of the longest fasts I had ever attempted to do, which was a 40-day fast. And so I was just like, God, I need you to help me get through this. I really need you to make this okay. I need you to give me some sense of peace and some sense of comfort. And my friend picked me up, just so I wasn't here alone by myself. Went back to her house. We got food. I didn't really eat. Fun fact about me: when I'm grieving, I do not eat. um, and went back to her house, tried to eat a little bit of something. While she was out to go get the food, my sister called me again, and she said I had worship music playing again. And I just kept saying, God, I need you to make it all right. God, I need you to make it all right. I barely slept that night. I don't think I slept for the next couple of days, really kind of on and off, dozing on and off, sleeping. But I just remember feeling like, God, you have to work this out, because you have taken somebody from me that used to be a representation of peace, quite literally. My grandmother that passed away in 2023 was such a sweet lady. She was spunky. She would tell you a thing or two, okay? But she was so, so sweet. And she loved everybody. And when you don't have that semblance of peace anymore, when you don't have that semblance of comfort anymore, she literally, when I think of comfort, I think of her. Like, she's just my comfort. She's my safe space. And not having that was very difficult, because I hadn't gotten to the point in my faith yet where my faith was my comfort space. And then I was reminded what my other grandmothers had told me, what my parents have told me, of there's going to come a point in time where their faith, as my parents, as my grandparents, does not work for me. It doesn't cover me. It covers me, right? But I have to have a faith of my own. And then in there, grieving my grandmother, I was able to develop literally what the Bible talks about, a mustard seed of faith. Because I went through the next couple of days just praising God every chance I got. Tears in my eyes, frustrated, angry at times, but praising him, because I said, you know, she has lived a full life. She's no longer in pain. She's with my other grandmothers. They get to all now watch over me and guide me from above. I get to feel comfort in knowing that they loved me, that I'm a part of their legacy forever. And so I was praising him in the middle of what was probably one of the darkest times of my life. Because I said, God, you have to make it okay. If you're going to do this to me, you have to make this okay in the end. I have to trust that you know what you're doing. I have to trust that you haven't forgotten about me. I have to trust that you're not punishing me for something. So I would say, in the grit part of this, right? Because I want you all to have practical tools. What has practically helped me in walking with grief has been the fact that I have to pray even when my heart breaks. And developing a prayer life, we've talked about, is not easy. It doesn't come overnight. It has to be something that is done consistently. But when I want to break down, when I want to give up, when I want to say, throw all of the towels in, I don't even want to play the game anymore, I had to pray. I had to worship him. I wrote a poem about a year and a half ago now, and I said, it's a poem that says, while you wait. And in it, I wrote, what do I do in the waiting room now? I worship while I wait. I pray while I wait. And so that's what I encourage you to do. While you wait for the grief to pass, while you wait for this emotion to not fully overtake you, because it's going to come in waves. But while you wait for that wave and that tide to go out, I want you to worship and pray. And I know it's going to be hard. I'm not saying it's about to be easy. I'm not saying you're going to feel like it. I'm not even saying you're going to enjoy it while it's happening, but I am saying it will give you, hopefully, a sense of peace. It will remind you of just how good God is. Even though this had to happen, even though wrestling with the idea that, God, you're allowing this bad thing to happen. You're allowing this thing that's breaking my heart to happen. You're allowing it to happen. Trust me, I've been there, y'all. I have been there, saying, God, you would allow this to happen, and I'm supposed to praise you. I'm supposed to thank you. I'm supposed to be joyful. It's hard. And I'm not saying give him joy when you're praising him. I'm saying give him the honest reaction to praising. God, I'm praising you because I know that you will still work this out for my good. I'm praising you because even though I can't see the road you're taking me down, I'm praising you because I know that you know all things. I rest in the fact that I don't have to know everything because he does. I don't need to have all the answers because he does. I rest in the fact that he literally is guiding my steps every single day. And so that means even while I'm in grief, even while I'm experiencing heartbreak, even while I feel like I'm losing my mind, even while I'm trying to find a sense of normalcy, even in the confusion, even in the misunderstandings, I trust that he knows what he's doing. I trust that everything in its own timing works out. I trust that even though I feel this void in my heart, there has to be something else that comes along. He's not just going to take part of you and not give you something else to hopefully hold on to. He's not going to take from you without also blessing you. He's not going to rip something down, not to build something new. And I know that it is hard to see that right now. So I'm saying take your time in the grief. Do not rush it at all. I hate sometimes when people who have never experienced grief and they go up to somebody currently grieving and they say, God's got you, right? They dismiss the pain. Y'all, I'm not dismissing the pain. I'm saying while you're in pain, go to him. While your heart breaks, tell him. And yes, he knows all things. Yes, he can see it. Yes, he understands. But I'm saying tell him anyway. Give him the broken pieces anyway. You're not going to do anything with it except look at them anyway. Give it to him. Give him the opportunity to show you that he's God. Give him the opportunity to show you that he's honest and true. Give him the opportunity to love on you and hold you while your heart breaks long enough so that he can mend it. Give him that opportunity. And what we've talked about this entire season, tell him what his word says. Remind him of what his word says. Remind him that he said he would walk with you. Remind him that his rod and his staff has to comfort you. Remind him that he said he would never leave nor forsake you. Remind him of what his word says. I know your heart's breaking. I know it hurts to be reminded of other people and other things as they have passed away. I know it hurts. I know it hurts to walk outside and smell something and think about your loved one that's passed away. I know it hurts to see a red car and be reminded of the jokes they used to tell. I know it hurts to see reminders every single day and you feel like you have to still walk this thing out with a smile on your face, with your head held high. I get it. I have been there. And I'm not so removed from it to understand that it hurts. It's a pain it's actually not just a pain, it's an aching that just literally never goes away. We learn how to deal with it. We learn how to cope. We learn how to find mechanisms. But I'm telling you, from my own personal experience, what has made the grieving just a little bit easier has been the fact that God has been my foundation. Reminding him of what his word said about what he would do in this situation has been the thing I have been able to rest on. Worship until your worship is pure. What I mean by that is even in pain, worship, and worship until you don't feel the pain anymore. There's an amazing song by Anna Golden called Manassas, and she talks about in her intro to the song, just her journey of experiencing church hurt and then finding a new church that was her Manassas. And the Bible talks about what that Manassas is, and that means God will restore. God will restore everything that was taken from you. God will give you peace again. God will give you joy again, and he will do it in such a way that you forget about the pain. I'm not saying you're going to forget about your loved one that passed away. I'm not expecting you to. I don't want you to. But I am saying allow him the opportunity to restore what was broken. Allow him the opportunity to come in and give you another chance to experience love, another chance to experience overflow, another chance to experience comfort. I will always carry my grandmothers with me. They will always be some of the most important women in my life. And I'm grateful and blessed that I had the time with them that I did, to be poured into by them. They poured from an overflow that I am grateful for. And now their pouring stops. Their prayers continue to cover me, but the pouring from them stops. So now my pour comes from God. And until He gives me another opportunity to experience an overflow of love, I'm telling y'all, I know it's hard. I know it's hard. Anniversaries come up and then you're reminded of their deaths. You're reminded that they're no longer here. Their birthdays come around, and instead of calling them, you can't. I get it. I get it. But while you wait for that pain to pass, while you wait for that grief to turn to joy, ask Him to hear your heart. Ask Him to restore. Put the expectancy on Him. While you wait, worship Him. Pray. Even if nothing else works, worship. Even when your heart is breaking, worship. Even when you're angry, worship. That is your challenge. That is the grit that I'm giving you today. Give Him everything. He's not going to be angry that you're angry with Him. He's not intimidated by your sadness. He's not overwhelmed with your grief, with your frustration, with your confusion. Give it to Him and worship until the worship actually comes from a pure place. Even if your heart is breaking, even if you don't feel like going another day, worship until He proves Himself true, because He's going to. He's going to prove Himself true every single time. The good news is His word does not return to Him void. The good news is He's still a comforter. The good news is He's still a provider. The good news is He can still restore. That's the good news. So give Him everything. Don't shy away from it. Don't feel like you have to hide your grief. He wants the pieces so that He can put it together and show you something new. But you have to trust Him enough to give Him those pieces, to give Him that opportunity to show up for you. There's an amazing song by Anthony Evans that's literally called Even If, which is funny, but he literally talks about even if I'm at my lowest, I'm still going to praise you. And I'm going to praise you until my heart truly sings again. Until I'm fully convinced that you have my back, until I'm fully restored, until I'm fully at peace, until I'm fully joyful, I will still sing your praises. And I get it's hard. I get it's difficult. I get it's not easy, but it's so, so worth it. So I pray that He comforts you today. I pray that as you experience grief, He wraps His arms around you and you feel it today. I pray you feel the squeeze so that as He squeezes you with love, with peace, with comfort, with hope again, you exhale the worry, you exhale a little bit of the pain. I know that the pain is always going to be there. Trust me, I still feel it. There's a constant aching that just does not go away. I get it. But He wants to love you through it. But He can only love you through it if you allow Him in, if you give Him access, if you grant Him permission. So give it to Him. He can do a lot more with it than you can. So I hope some part of this episode resonated with you. I hope you find love and peace again if you haven't experienced it in a while. My heart goes out to all of you experiencing grief right now. Whether it's fresh, whether it's new, whether it's 3 years old, it doesn't matter. I hope your heart experiences comfort from that grief. I hope you have a village that is loving and supporting you. I hope you are reminded of how much God loves you and wants to be in community with you. I say it all the time. Love is coming after you. It wants to be with you. It's chasing you. I hope you allow it to come in. I hope you allow it to wrap itself around you. I hope you all find peace in this season. Thank you so much. This is the finale of Grace and Grit. Ah! It's absolutely insane to me that we have done a full season, and it's been such a new season for me. It's been a new season for us growing as a Grace and Grit community. I thank you all so, so much. I thank God for giving me the courage to do this assignment, to carry out this assignment, to carry out this mission and this purpose. I hope you all find peace and joy and love. Season 3 of Grace and Grit will be coming soon, I promise. But in the meantime, I'm going to rest a little bit. But I thank you all so much for joining me on this journey. Please stay tuned if you are not already. Follow Grace and Grit Pod, all one word, anywhere on social media, YouTube. Connect with us. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for joining us again on the season finale of Grace and Grit. I know it was a kind of a downer, y'all, but I had to talk about it. It was an important episode for me to talk about. So thank you all so much for being on this journey with me. Remember that God's grace and mercies are new every single day, covering you and your journey, but He is expecting you and wants you to put a little bit of grit in. And so I love you all. And until next time, go in love, go in peace. And I am your host, Artrice LaNae.